Hello, I'm Reverend Dr. Frank Porter, and this is my program, Changing Lives. I want to read to you out of the book of Daniel, chapter 5, beginning with verse 1. It says, King Belshazzar gave a great banquet. Now, this is the leader in the Mesopotamia area. Mesopotamia, which means the land between the two rivers, between the Euphrates River. Okay? Now, King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for his 1,000 nobles, and in the presence of the thousand, he drank wine. He got plastered. Just tell it like it is. Under the influence of the wine, Belshazzar ordered the gold and silver vessels that his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple at Jerusalem to be brought so that the king and his nobles, his consorts, and his concubines could drink from them. He, basically what we're saying, he had no respect for God's holy vessels from the temple in Jerusalem. I want you to understand, not to justify his actions, no, but in these days that we're talking here, the philosophy of man was to eat his own God. Example, you had a God for the Latinos, you had a God for the people out of Africa, you had a God for the French, you had a different God for the Spaniards, okay? So he didn't respect the God of the Hebrews. And his father was the one who collected these ornaments from the synagogue, let's call it the church at that time, holy vessels. So in some respects you say, well, he knew no better. But number two, it didn't help for him to be drunk, did it? Okay. So one more time, the golden vessel that had been taken out of the sanctuary of the house of God in Jerusalem were then brought. Now, the next verse. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. They praised the gods for what? For what this man Belshazzar had been given. See, because his father was the one who conquered, let's call it, who conquered the Jewish people and brought them into captivity to Babylon. Now, let's go on. Just then, the finger of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace opposite the lampstand so that the king could see the hand as it wrote. Okay? So again, on the wall, the plastered wall of the palace where he was having his little orgy with his friends, concubines, wives, and plus. And they were getting commode-hugging drunk. Okay? So he sees this hand writing on the wall. The king's face darkened and his thoughts alarmed him. The joints of his loins were loosened and his knees knocked together. It scared the living daylights out of him. Why? Because it was just a hand. How big? I don't know, but it must have been pretty big because the walls were 30 foot high and the writing was pretty thick and he couldn't understand what the writing said. It was not in his language. The king called loudly for the exorcists, Chaldeans, the diviners to be brought. The king addressed the wise men of Babylon. Whoever can read this writing and tell me its meaning shall be clothed in purple and wear a golden chain on his neck, and shall rule as one of the three of the in the kingdom. Now, I want you to understand what's going on here. The king offered, whoever can read the writing on that wall, if you can tell me what it is, I'm going to give you the best clothing money can buy, because only the king had example purple colored robes. Okay, the poor people didn't have that. They were in black and white. Why do I mean black? Because the white got so dirty, and they didn't have washing machines in those days, and they couldn't get it as clean as possible. And then a gold chain around his neck, and a signet ring to give him authority. Okay, and the last thing, which is very important for you and me to understand, is this: he gave him, or he will give the person who can decipher the writing on the wall, 1/3 power in the country, in his kingdom of Babylon at this time. And as I mentioned before, Mesopotamia, Babylon is in Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia means the land, okay, between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates River. Okay? Now, let's go on. The word is called, okay, because here it's mentioning, I'll give him 1/3 of the power in my kingdom. It's called co-regent. Co-regent. In other words, Belshazzar was not the only one ruling in his kingdom at this historic time. The second person was his mother. She was help him run the affairs of the kingdom. And he was going to let whoever could decipher the message on the wall to be a third partner in the kingdom. Now, why, in your mind, why would he be given such a big prize? I mean, let's look at it today. You have a football player who's been given a contract for the next 3 years to 5 years. And the contract is for $100 million. Example. You'd ask yourself, wow, that's a big price to pay for one man playing football or basketball. Why so much? He played for less, but this is where our economy is headed also. He's going to give 1/3 of the power and of the doings of his kingdom. Number one, he's intoxicated. Number two, he's too young to run the kingdom by himself. Why? He's got his mommy is helping him. His mother, because she's not a male, she's a female, and her husband, Nebuchadnezzar, probably helped. She watched everything he did, so she was able to guide him with the rights and the wrongs, the plus and the minuses, the historic part of her, to give him knowledge and wisdom that he didn't have, because either he was retarded in some form or some part, or he was just too young and didn't know enough of between right and wrong and the things to do. Okay. Then all the king's wise men came, but they could not read the writing or make known its meaning to the king. It was a language they didn't understand. Some people say it was a Hebrew language. And here they were talking a totally different language. Okay. Now, King Belshazzar grew exceedingly alarmed, and his face darkened, and his nobles were dismayed. Okay. Because of the state of the king and his nobles, the queen came to the banquet hall. The queen spoke up and said, "O king, live forever. Let your thoughts not alarm you or your face darken. Now, where she wasn't at the party. Why? Because she's smart. She's got experience, wisdom behind her. They sent message to her. Look at what your boy's up to. Look at what your boy's doing. He's giving away 1/3 of the kingdom to get a message, okay, that nobody could decipher. And she comes into the room with power and authority and wisdom and knowledge. Why? Because she's not saying, oh, king, I don't know what to do either. I know you're not asking me. She came with the wisdom and knowledge and experience. Hey, don't worry about it, son. I'll get you the answer. And I'm not going to answer it for you, but I know somebody who can and who will. There is a man, she says, in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods, plural, in him. In your father's time, remember, plural, why? Because they worship different gods. Again, the philosophy was there's a God for the Latinos, there's a God for the Chinese, there's a God for the Greeks, there's different gods for different people. But no, there isn't. So one more time, there's a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him in your father's time, illumination, understanding, and wisdom like that of the gods who were to be found in him. And your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the magicians, exorcists, Chaldeans, and the diviners. Now, at this point, at this time, okay, the one she's talking about is Daniel. Daniel is already nearing his 80 years of age. He's semi-retired, if not more. Seeing that there is to be found in Daniel, whom the king called Belshazzar, extraordinary. Bel is the name of their god, who can answer these questions, what was written on the wall. Extraordinary spirit, knowledge, and understanding to interpret dreams, to explain riddles, and to solve problems. Let Daniel know now, let him be called to tell the meaning of these writings. Daniel was then brought before the king. The king addressed Daniel. You are Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah. I have heard about you from my mommy, that you have the spirit of the gods in you, and that illumination, knowledge, and extraordinary wisdom are to be found in you. Now the wise men and exorcists have been brought before me to read this writing and to make known its meaning to me, but they could not tell what it meant. Okay, now let's go on. I have heard about you that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now if you can read the writing and make known the meaning to me, you shall be clothed in purple and wear a golden chain on your neck and rule as one of the three in the kingdom. Then now he didn't even ask his mom. Mom, what do you think? She's the one with all the wisdom. He's the one who's just drunk, that's all. And maybe too young. Okay? Now, he didn't even ask his mother permission. Or, Mom, what do you think about what I'm about to do? Yeah, he doesn't think straight. He doesn't think right. Then Daniel said in reply to the king, because he was being offered $100 million in a sense, who can be 1/3 power in the kingdom of Babylon? You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your presents to others. But I will read the writing for the king and make its meaning known to him. What is he saying? Keep it. I don't want your goodies. But I know I need to tell you to interpret the writing on the wall. Why? Because God wrote it. My God wrote it. Not only did he write it, it was a personal message for you, who you are the ruler and the decision maker in this, apparently, in this kingdom. Because he sure didn't wait for his mom. Okay? King, O King, the Most High God, bestowed kingship, grandeur, glory, and majesty upon you, your father, and Nebuchadnezzar. And because of the grandeur that he bestowed upon him, all the people and nations of every language, okay, trembled in fear of him. They trembled in fear of who? Your father, Nebuchadnezzar. Why? Because God had ordained for him to be ruler. Now, the problem there is, how did he rule? And maybe he ruled properly among his subjects because Daniel was there and because he asked Daniel for interpretations. Okay, he put to death whom he wished, and whom he wished he let live, and he raised high whom he wished, and whom he wished he brought low. But what is that telling you? No, people respected him, and that's the wrong word to use. People were afraid of him. Why? Because Nebuchadnezzar, the father, could kill anybody and get away with it. He didn't even need a reason to do it. And people were afraid of him. And the DNA of the father was in the son. Yeah, just doing stupid things instead of doing blessings for himself, for the kingdom, and for his subjects. But when he grew haughty and willfully presumptuous, he was disposed from his royal throne, and his glory was removed from him. He what? He was humbled. Who did the humbling? My God humbled your father. He was driven away from men, and his mind made like that of a beast, and his habitation was with wild donkeys. He was fed grass like cattle, and his body was drenched with the dew of heaven, until he came to know that the Most High God, the real God, mine, is sovereign over the realm of man, and set over it whom he wishes. Our God, the God of the Hebrews, is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-wisdom. He puts people in charge of a country. Example. That doesn't mean he did wrong. That doesn't mean he made a mistake with Nebuchadnezzar, for example. Okay? What it means is this. He had the chance. He had the opportunity. Your father had it. And he blundered his way through it. And he was not a blessing to anybody. And God tried to straighten him out. But you, Belshazzar, his son, did not humble yourself, although you knew all this. I'm not telling you anything you didn't know, but the reason why I'm telling you is, son, you're drunk. Son, you couldn't think straight when you were sober, and you surely can't think straight now when you're intoxicated. You exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven, and had the vessels of his temple brought to you. You and your nobles were and consorts, and your concubines drank wine from them that praised the gods of silver and gold, bronze and iron, wood and stone, which do not see, hear, or understand, but the God with whom controls your life's breath and every move you make, him you did not glorify. You tried to make a fool out of my God, and using his holy vessels, like the cups. Yeah. As though today you had plastic cups for coffee or for your drink or whatever. He brought them down to that. He tried to bring them down to that level. They didn't mean anything to him, and it didn't bother him one bit. But now, God, okay, Nebuchadnezzar, God tried working with him. God humbled him as a beast for 7 years, actually. Okay. Now the son, from the father's experience, and here Daniel is telling him, you knew what happened to your father. You were told your father's history. You have a mother to confide in. She wasn't here partying with you and your little group. She wasn't. But guess what? God gave your daddy opportunities that he's not going to afford to you. He's not. Why did Daniel tell him, keep your goodies, keep your robe, keep your gold chains, keep the position 1/3 all powerful over the entire land? Why? Because that very night, Belshazzar was going to die. He was going to be assassinated by his own people. What does that tell you? What Daniel has said all along. God gives man the opportunity to be authority on this earth, but to rule wisely in the kingdom and for the servants, to be a plus for society, to be a picture of God in human form for the people. And his father didn't work with it, didn't do for the better. And son, the God, the living God that we know, is not going to afford you the opportunity, because you already knew what he had done, God had done to and with your father. So that night, just like the prophet Daniel had said, you will be dead. And the dumb boy was so still, he gave him the robe. Here. Take the robe. Take the gold chain. Put the signet ring on your finger. Hey, rule. Say whatever you want, and the people will do it. You're 1/3 all powerful here in the kingdom. 1/3 of what? Tonight, your kingdom will be taken from you. What's happening in our streets when young men are with their fists hitting innocent people, men and women, and knocking them senseless to the pavement? Because God gave that young man strength and health and youth. And what are they doing with it? How many times, I understand recently, a man was put in jail 52 times, and he was let out 52 different times until finally, on the 53rd or 54th, he was finally put in jail. How many chances do we need to give them when they do wrong? How long will this be going on? Is it going to get worse? Is anybody going to learn from our experiences? We might not have a mother. And I know most of us, let's say, don't have a father. But we can read the Word of God and stories like this to help us decipher what's on the wall. And let me say one last thing about that. Okay? Again, Belshazzar saw fingers writing on the wall, on the plaster of the wall. Belshazzar saw a hand writing on the plaster of the wall. And it also says in Belshazzar saw the palm of the hand. Okay? What does that mean? I'll close with this. Writing on the wall, all the people at the party, let's say there's 1,000 people there. All the people at the party saw the hand. But only one man, that's Belshazzar, saw the palm of the hand. What does that mean? In the book of Isaiah chapter 49 verse 16, the Word of God says, I have not written you in the palm of my hand. I have etched you in the palm of my hand. It's like he took a knife and cut his palm. And it's not going to rub away. It's going to be always there. I have you in the palm of my hand. I can continue to bless you, and that you would bless those around you, your mother, your father, your grandpa, your grandma, by your history, your wife, your children. Or I can take you out. I'm the God. I'm the one who lets live and lets die. And I wrote you in the palm of my hand, but the decision of what I'll do with you was up to you. God bless you, your friend, Reverend Dr. Frank Porter. Amen.